we're going to take a look at some further studies of behavior using different types of organisms. We're going to jump around from topic to topic. Some of these things you'll have heard of before. Some of them hopefully will be new. Altruism is something that you've probably heard of before. People talk about that with human behaviors as well too. It's basically some kind of unselfish behavior. So you put yourself at risk somehow to help increase the chance of another individual surviving. Many times those individuals that you're trying to help to survive are related to you genetically, and sometimes they're not as well too. Humans are quite complicated, but it's really fun to observe this behavior in other organisms as well too. So this little guy here is called a naked mole rat, and these naked mole rats kind of live in colonies. And the naked mole rats are well documented for helping to raise kids that are not their own. And overall, it's presumed that this helps to ensure the survival of their genes. So even if they're just related, if they're brothers or sisters, at least they share 50% of their genes. So if they survive, they're still passing on the genes, that type of thing. Vampire bats are awesome because they share blood with each other. So you've gone out feeding and then you come back and you've had a really good day, and then a neighbor of yours has not had a good day, didn't get that much blood sucking activity going on, and so I will actually regurgitate and give my friend some blood, because later on this activity will actually be returned. The benefit of receiving blood when starving is greater than the cost of donating blood after feeding well. That's a good way to put it. So altruism is very, very nice. And we're going to look at, here's a specific example of altruism. We're going to be looking at honeybees as a colony, as a super colony. Honeybees are loosely organized into something like this, with a queen, a fertile female. They lay the eggs, basically. There are drones that are the fertile males, and they go out and try to search for rare females to try to mate with, fertile females to try to mate with to start additional colonies. And then there are the workers, and the workers are the most interesting because they are infertile females. They cannot have their own babies, and there's thousands of them, and they do all the work, hence the title workers. Foraging for food, raising all the babies. They give up their lives defending the colony, and they're raising babies that are maybe related to them, but they're not able to actually make babies themselves. So that's totally altruistic. So they cooperate. This whole thing functions as a super organism, basically. So natural selection is not acting on the individuals, because these guys, the infertile females, they're gone anyways. There's nothing to be passed on. So the natural selection acts on the whole colony level rather than the individual. So it seems like natural selection should cancel out altruistic behaviors, because it doesn't benefit your own genes actually increasing. But if you think of cooperation, a group of animals who help each other in some way may be more successful in the overall struggle for existence than animals that do not, and all of them will increase their chance of reproduction. So it's programmed into their DNA to help the survival of the colony as a whole, and hence the propagation of genes related to honeybees. Plus, we get some honey out of it. I don't even like honey. Way too sweet. Other types of behaviors that we can look at are something like diurnal patterns. So looking at animals that function, we're kind of diurnal. We're active during the day, and we sleep at night, unless you work as a bouncer in a nightclub. Moon rats are nocturnal. They forage at night for active prey. This makes sense. Why would they want to do that? Why would they go searching for food at night? Of course, it makes them less vulnerable to being eaten up, because they're less visible, less vulnerable to predation at night. Red deer follow an annual cycle of, what's it called? It's called an E.6 cycle, basically. They're sexually active in the fall, and all kinds of things happen. They're only able to make babies during the fall, and that's when the males get really aggressive. They establish dominance over groups of females, have their own harems, basically. And in the end, if everything works out well and the females get fertilized, then the timing's all right, because if they're active in the fall, then it takes a certain amount of time for these babies to grow, and then they are born right around springtime, which is great because you're vulnerable, because you're taking care of kids, and in the springtime there's lots of food available. So All of these behaviors are to help the survival of the organism in some way, shape, or form. So it's really interesting. Foraging as well too. Foraging means searching for food, and depending on the type of organism, there's different types of foraging behaviors out there. If you've done any Daphnia experiments before, you know that they're good for looking at them under a microscope, as you can see their little tiny cute hearts beat. In this case, we're talking about these guys getting eaten though, and this type of fish called a bluegill sunfish actually eats Daphnia. When Daphnia density are low, which means there's not a lot of food around, they'll basically eat any size, right? That makes sense. You can't be too picky. Just take what you get. However, when there's tons of Daphnia that are around, they try to save energy by being picky and only eating the larger ones. By only eating the larger ones, they don't have to eat as frequently, and they can save energy and not have to swim around so frantically. Did I say that right? I hope so. Anyways, hope that makes sense. Starlings feed young on crane fly larvae, so they actually try to find these things in the soil. Yum yum. They fill their beak with these things and then fly back and give it to their babies, and the babies look at this like it's a like a steak, a big fat juicy steak. Gross! I'm getting the shivers. So the interesting about this is that the number that they actually try to put in their mouth, you know, it's like the marshmallow game. How many can you actually cram into your mouth? It's probably not comfortable to cram that many into your mouth. But if you have to fly back a long distance, then it's probably more worth your while to cram your mouth as full as possible. If you only have a short distance to fly, then you can fly back, you know, take a few trips or something like that. So this has been observed in these starlings, that the number that they probe for, number that they're willing to probe for, depends on the distance between home and where they are. So that makes sense. And if your mouth is already full and you go and try to dig for more, it's going to be very difficult. So something like that. And finally, did you see that? Distance increases, number of larvae that they're probing for actually increases. And finally, the evolution of exaggerated traits. You've probably heard about the infamous peacock. Humans try to use it as an example of how to, play the dating game. It's called peacocking. You try to make yourself stand out. You wear crazy looking hats, try to attract attention. People look at you and you're trying to show people that, hey, even when I dress like this, I can still survive. So you should try to go out on a date with me. The peacock tail is used aggressively during courtship to attract females. Shouldn't this easily knock this characteristic out of the gene pool though? Because when you're running around with a tail like this, that's a lot to grab onto, right? It's a lot to grab onto. But it is normally a hindrance, but you're kind of proving that, look, I can have this and I can still stay alive. They still can't catch me even though I'm driving a Lamborghini. I have this Lamborghini, it's red, I speed down the highway. Even despite that, I haven't been arrested. I can outrun the cops, blah, 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 blah. The cops are the wolves, by the example. So these exaggerated traits aren't killing them off. They still exist, so they must be well adapted in other ways, and so therefore they make a good mate. And as long as evolution and natural selection doesn't eliminate this trait, it stays, and so it becomes an attractive trait. So go ahead, stand close to your screen, and you can try your own peacocking effects for this. All right.